Hi, everybody. This is Joe Lample, the Joe behind Joe Gardner, and welcome to the Joe Gardner Show. This episode is a little different from what you're used to hearing here, but stay with me because what we're talking about today has everything to do with the values that we all share as gardeners, land stewards, and people who care deeply about our environment. Recently, I had the opportunity to travel to Westport, Connecticut to deliver a keynote address at the invitation of Sustainable Westport, a local nonprofit doing inspiring work to move their entire community towards a healthier, more sustainable future. And their mission is about making meaningful change, both big and small, and helping others do the same. And the more I learned as I prepared for this event, the more I thought this is a story that needs to be told far and wide. That idea of walking the talk and finding ways to motivate others to take their own steps forward is something that I believe strongly in, because while we're all doing our part in our own gardens or communities, there's always more we can do to inspire the people around us. And my hope for this episode is that it will inspire you in some way, whether you're just getting started yourself or you're someone with more time and passion to put towards building a similar program, perhaps in your own town. There's a goldmine of ideas in this conversation and in the accompanying show notes that I think you'll find both practical and motivating. In this episode, I sit down with two amazing leaders from Sustainable Westport, Johanna Martel and Gately Ross, and we talk about the ripple effects of local action, how to foster change at the community level, and why your voice and your example matters more than ever. Thanks also to the amazing Gretchen Hoffman, another key contributor to the success of Sustainable Westport's ongoing efforts, with whom I had the chance and privilege to work with leading up to and throughout the time in Westport. And one fun side note that I wanted to mention before we get started, I added an outtake to the very end of this episode, which I'll close with on the backside of this interview. When I sat down in the studio with Gately and Joe, they had no idea what I was going to ask them, so I thought I'd have a little fun with the opening question just to set the tone. Again, it's at the very end of this episode. When I come back on camera, it'll be the last part. So let's get into this, and I hope you enjoy it. Johanna, Gately, you all are volunteers for this incredible organization, Sustainable Westport. We're going to learn about that a lot today, but before we do, tell us a little bit about you. What got you involved in this? Give us a little bit of that.
Okay, I'll jump in. I've lived in Westport for about 12 years now. My background is that of an attorney. I practiced law for about 15 years in law firms, in a family office. And during COVID, I was kind of realizing I was a little just dissatisfied with my job. I wanted a little more purpose in what I was doing. I actually really enjoy practicing law, but where I was working was feeling a little empty. And a friend of ours, a mutual friend who used to be part of Sustainable Westport back when we were a town committee, had approached me about maybe running the nonprofit. Had just spun out as a nonprofit, and they really needed someone to do sort of the day-to-day work of running the organization. Having no background doing that, I thought, okay, this is interesting. Sustainability is something I'm interested in, but had not spent a ton of time doing it. My practice had really focused on commercial real estate, though I had been interested in environmental law in law school. But I thought maybe I can dig in. I hadn't heard about Sustainable Westport, but figured it could be something that would give back to me a little bit more in my day-to-day work. So kind of found my friend Gately here. I thought maybe we could join forces and do it together. So that's kind of how we ended up being co-directors. I honestly can't believe how much time has passed since we kind of started this, right? It's amazing.
It's because you're having fun. Gately?
Yes.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Yes, most of the time.
Yeah.
Tell us about you.
So I have been in Westport a little bit longer, almost 20 years now. My background, I'm a trained veterinarian. I practiced emergency medicine for years. Prior to that, I was working in marine conservation work on the West Coast. And then when my kids were a little bit younger, I stepped away because I was practicing emergency medicine. The schedule was a little bananas and really hard with young kids. So I took a couple years off, but I was really chomping at the bit to do something. And I didn't think it was medicine any longer. I had always, as I said, the background in marine environmental conservation. I knew that I wanted to get into something in that field. I was looking loosely, and then COVID hit. And then this opportunity presented itself. And, I think it was a really good mix. It was a good fit for both Joe and myself. I think by nature, we're both really curious. We're comfortable being a little bit uncomfortable, which for us was a huge factor.
Mm.
We knew very little about a lot
Mm.
of what we had to learn, but we were excited. And, I think for me, the most important thing in coming into this no nonprofit work, which is a whole different can of worms, limited community work other than in the schools, right? Very active in the schools with the kids, but beyond that, not a lot of exposure, was I wanted to do something that was local and felt purposeful and would model good behavior for my boys. And I think that for me was really motivating and powerful.
Nice. So Sustainable Westport is the organization or the purpose or the mission. How would you define the verb or the noun for Sustainable Westport?
I think the one thing that we really focus on is educate. We can talk about our mission, but I think that's like kind of what it all comes down to is education. And obviously we do that in a variety of ways, but I think that's where we feel that we get the most return for our energy. And
Personally and professionally.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. I mean, look, it's slow, but I think when we see changes happen, whether that be just one person or obviously, the government making changes, like that's very rewarding to us because we feel that we've opened someone's eyes or showed them a different way to do things. And it's really through education. So that's the word I would pick,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's a good one. Just as you're saying that, and we've never talked about this, articulated this. When you say education, I start thinking about communication because sometimes
Mhm.
it's just about talking to people. It's about starting the conversation. Sometimes they already have some of that information, but if nobody's talking about it, we overlook things, right? So just starting to talk, the communication opens the doors for education, for engagement.
Mhm. Let's
Mhm.
pull back to 30,000 feet and give a broader overview. I should have maybe done this ahead of time as far as what is Sustainable Westport and who are we reaching? What's the effort? What's the goal to, in education, you said, Joe, that
Yeah.
that's the main goal, but education regarding what? I know sustainable is in the
Yeah.
description, but give
Uh,
me more.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability is an overwhelmingly big topic, I think. And part of what we do is try to break it down to make it a little more digestible because it does mean a lot of things. And, we can talk about these pillars of progress, those pillars of progress that we have on our website and that we kind of talk about a lot are the way that we see sort of breaking down sustainability in these buckets. Community engagement, I think, being first and foremost the biggest one, because almost everything we do is community engagement. And after that, it's natural resources and waste, buildings, energy, and transportation. So those are sort of the more tried and true. I think we didn't invent those, certainly. There's other organizations, I mean, that have kind of broken it down that way too. But those are the areas that I think we need to, as a community, see progress in order to kind of get to where we want to as a community. Our mission is to inspire, support, and connect residents,
Mhm.
organizations, and the town of Westport
Yeah.
to make, we say, both small changes and big commitments toward a healthier and more sustainable future for Westport.
And that has evolved, right? So I think what's important to note is that in the almost 4 years now that we've been doing this, our focus, our motivation, our vision, our mission have changed and evolved as we have or have not made progress. And I think one of the things when you say, the 30,000 foot, what we're looking at, I think that initially we came in hot, right? We were so excited and we really felt like this is a slam dunk
Mm.
and we're going to affect change out of the gate. It's
Mhm.
just so obvious. And it's so sweet and naive now.
To you.
And we put together, I tell this story a lot. We put together this big whiteboard with a 3-month, 6-month, 1 year, 3 or 5 year plan, right? I mean, we weren't even close. Like we were so off. And when we talk to people who have more experience with nonprofits, like, oh, right, that was actually a 20-year plan, right? Not a 3 year or 5 year. But that's good. I mean, that's part of the process, and we've been humbled and we continue to learn, but we've also started to really identify and pivot toward what rewards us and where we see our best ROI in terms of time, money, energy. And that is back to the community engagement. That's really, it's about getting everybody involved. I would say that's really our goal. If we could have every Westport household recognize that they play a role in advancing, in being sustainable. And not everybody's going to do everything, and that's okay. Everybody's got their interest, everybody's got their niche. That's okay. Every little bit counts, but we need everybody involved.
And it all adds up because a lot of the times the reason people don't get involved is they feel like, well, it's just me. I'm just a small fish
Exactly.
in a big pond. What difference is it going to make?
100%.
And you're well aware of that, very focused on it. But even before we get into more dialogue about that, as a committee, you said over the last 4 years, we've been working on this. It originated initially as a kind of a spinoff of a government.
Yeah, it was a town task force called the Green Task Force.
Mm-hmm.
And it was put together by the selectmen at the time in 2006.
Yeah.
So it really operated for a long time as a task force or a town committee. 2020 is when they rebranded as Sustainable Westport. And we were kind of seated under another nonprofit in town, local nonprofit called Earth Place, which is a nature center here, nature and education center here in town. And then in 2023, we actually moved as our own 501c3.
Yeah.
So we kind of separated from Earth Place and stood on our own.
And I think, of note, a lot of people come talk to us about that because we, as an independent nonprofit sustainability, community-based sustainability nonprofit, definitely stand apart from many of these sustainability groups, which are still embedded in the town.
Right.
Certainly in the state of Connecticut, that is the case. And sometimes it's more of an energy task force or waste recycling. Sometimes it's an overarching sustainability group. But we, as a nonprofit, are different. And I think there are pros and cons to that. We've definitely faced that issue. But it does offer us an opportunity to have a little more freedom.
When you came on board, did you kind of rewrite the playbook when the township was working on their part as one of their committee responsibilities or whatever you want to call it? That's kind of different than somebody coming in because they care and they're passionate about it and they're volunteering. It's not a job. It's more of a public service. And you've put together this dynamic team that really seems to be moving and shaking and beating the bushes and really creating a lot of opportunity. Am I right about that? When you guys kind of...
Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that the committee or the task force wanted to spin out as a nonprofit is because it was still, as a committee or task force in the structure of the municipality, all of those people are volunteers, or most of them are volunteers.
Okay.
However, they're meeting typically once a month. And it has to be, there's a lot of bureaucracy around scheduling that,
Notice,
et cetera. But most of those people have full-time jobs otherwise and are doing this because they're motivated and interested. And it's very difficult to really get the ball rolling and affect change in that structure,
Right.
which is why they moved into this nonprofit concept. When Joe and I came on, I think, part of the reason that we decided to do it together was because we both have young families-ish, youngish, and it was supposed to be kind of a part-time shared responsibility, but together it would be definitively a full-time job. And we've been able to, for the most part, continue on that schedule. I think part of it has a lot to do with our personalities and our desire to really make a change. We're invested in this emotionally.
Yeah, and I will say we one of our goals for the organization is honestly for it to go on beyond us. Like we want it to be, this should be something that generations and generations of Westporters care about. And so I think like we're really trying to legitimize the organization by building staff. I'd like for more of them to be paid so that there's real investment in the organization itself. Because I think it can be powerful. We're fortunate to have some really wonderful, passionate volunteers involved now. And I'd like to think that's in part from our own sort of devotion to the
Yes.
organization and trying to elevate it
Mhm.
in the town. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I'm most proud of is
Yeah.
the team that we've amassed,
Yeah.
honestly.
And how many people are on the team roughly?
There's really, I guess, 5 of us, sort of more,
Internal team.
internal team.
And then we have a couple of team leaders. And I mean, just recently have identified another person to join our team, developing a new program. So we're growing for sure. There's no question about it. I think to Joe's point, as a nonprofit, it is important. And there are other organizations. There's some other really terrific organizations in, the New England area that are doing this as a nonprofit, but they have legitimate staff that are paid.
Mm.
And, in order for this to be sustainable, no pun intended,
Mm,
there needs to be a structure by which we can pay staff and we can build out, and we're not, eating paycheck to paycheck, so to speak,
Mhm.
which is where we currently live. And we'd like to be able to grow that.
I think that one of the main reasons that I from my outside looking in and doing some homework on this, to see the momentum that you've picked up is just because of the energy and the willingness the tenacity to stick in there. And like you said, when you first revealed your short-term plan, which is really a 20-year plan, you had
yeah.
big ambition and realized, we're probably not going to make those goals, but you
Right.
stuck with it. You were, playing the sustainability game just to make sure that you gave it your all in the time that it took. And that has to be the most important thing in the big picture of this, is that you need that. I mean, in the metaphor of maybe starting a fire in your house to stay warm, you got to have a really good dry hardwood at the base to really
Yeah.
get the fire roaring. And I feel like you are kind of those people. But then you have to come up with, how are we going to reach these people? Because Gately, you said
Mhm.
earlier, you got to get people to care. Every person can make a difference, but you got to get them to care. So you've got to come up with programs and ideas and motivating opportunities to everybody to kind of pick their lane
Correct.
and get into. So give us some examples or something before that. But I'm interested in hearing about some of the programs, because you reach the businesses, you reach the homeowners, you reach the government organizations, or it's all interconnected, but everybody's acting on an individual basis. So maybe some examples of some
Yeah,
of
I
those.
mean, one that predates us is the Zero Food Waste Challenge, which is really, a program that's inspiring residents to start recycling their food scraps. This can be a tough one because it's really not for everyone, although full disclosure, I think it's incredibly easy, and this town offers a lot of different ways to do it.
Mm.
So you don't need to be a gardener that's composting in their backyard. Our transfer station offers drop off for free. You really don't have to do much. You got to just bring your food scraps down there. And there are other companies in town that will also come pick it up from your house once a week. So there's something for everyone to participate in that. But I understand, I think it was one of those programs that I think there was participation quickly, but it's stagnated in terms of participation, because I think we've gotten all the people that think they want to try it. So it's like now we're kind of at that point where we're like, how do we get the other people to try it though?
Yeah.
And because it is one of those things, I think once you start doing it, you're like, oh, it's no big deal. It
Mm.
really isn't. It's easy. So that's one that's out there. In all of our different pillars, we have different programs.
Yeah, I think what we do when we're trying to identify programs, one, we look to other organizations
For
that have
sure.
had successful programs. There are a lot, as I said, a lot of people out there doing great stuff. We do not need to reinvent the wheel here. Sharing best practices goes a long way. Sharing ideas goes a long way. But then looking to each of the pillars to see, is there specific programming? So while somebody may not be willing to divert their food waste, they are interested in maybe learning more about, they're about to buy a new car and they're interested in learning more about what they might buy. Is an electric car an option for them? Or, many people own their homes. The cost of electricity is egregious. Is there an opportunity to save some money by making your home more energy efficient?
It's interesting because I think we have learned, I don't know if it's just for this community, I would wager it is not, but it's about how we package the program so that it's something that that person or business will care about,
Right.
right? So
Keyword.
sometimes it's health. We often lead with health. Like when we are promoting, there's a school in town that's being completely rebuilt. And we advocated for a long time. It's a long process to do any municipal project, as you can imagine. But at the very beginning of it, we advocated very strongly for them to put sustainability at the top of the goals for the school. We did our best to share sort of knowledge that we had of other net zero schools that were being built in the state. And we led with, this is a healthier school for our kids, for our teachers, for our staff, right? It may be more energy efficient and all these other things. Maybe they're saving money in the long run, but we had to come from it for an angle that the town would care about. And you can't just lead with, it's good for the environment. It
No.
just is not,
No,
it's not a
that's
winning
right.
message, unfortunately.
Sadly, that
It's a great byproduct of whatever is happening,
Yeah.
but I think leading with it can be really, really hard. It's just not, it's not a winning message for a lot of people.
particularly when there's money at stake,
Of
right?
course.
Because a lot of the things that we advocate for may be more expensive up front.
Mm.
And so regardless of what the return is on the backside, you have to offer some other reason that it's a value.
So there you have a double challenge because not only do you need to get them to care up front, but have the long-term vision to see the return on the investment.
Correct.
Yep.
Wow.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Speaking of caring, this is a gardening environmental stewardship based podcast for the most part.
Yes.
And, doing our part to add more native plants and reduce the number of invasive plants coming into our yard. And, all of those things play a major role in the sustainability model from
Absolutely.
a biodiversity standpoint. And that's one that you would think you'd get more buy-in from homeowners to say, yeah, I'm all into that. That sounds good to me. But personally, when I'm out there beating that drum, it's not as widely received as you would think because there's a little bit of effort there. It's change, and
Mhm.
sometimes change is hard, but you have done an excellent job, not only with the digital information, which we haven't even talked about yet, because it's one of your core ways that you reach people is the extensive amount of information on the website, but you're also very good with the human interaction too. And so back to the homeowner side related to how do we engage people or how are you engaging people more importantly in what they can do with their own yards to promote sustainability or be better.
Well, I mean, look, the title of your talk tonight is there, right? Gardening for beauty and biodiversity, right? So
Right.
people need to know that, like, we're not telling them to make their yards look ugly in some way, but like your yard can be beautiful in a different way than maybe you traditionally might think about it.
And
Yeah.
I think that's a huge issue in communities like ours. We're a suburb outside of Manhattan. I don't know when you drove around if you saw it, there's an awful lot of lawn.
Mm-hmm.
And lawn, I think Americans have a love affair with lawn. I mean, there's so many interesting articles about it, how it, dates to post World War II. It's pervasive here. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is, and obviously your podcasts have addressed this, rewilding, right? A little bit of meadow goes a long way. And I shared a story. We have a part of our property is meadow, native meadow. And I took my boys out 2 nights ago and we sat on our back porch and watched the fireflies. And it was magical. And I think sharing stories like that with people, when I was still working in a veterinary hospital, I had a client come in one day and they are a neighbor of ours that I hadn't met before. And I was trying to explain to them where our house is relative to theirs. And they said, oh, you have that big overgrown corner of the property. What are you doing with it? And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that's a native planted meadow. We're not blighted. This is intentional. It's healthy. But that's their perspective because it wasn't monoculture turf.
Right.
We were, irresponsible. So I think just, again, having these conversations, talking to people about it, and then sharing. the birds, the bees, the butterflies. It's gorgeous. It's good for the environment. My yard is helping your yard if you're near mine, right? And sharing those messages is very important.
Someone reached out to us and was actually, I think they were looking on our website and said, you don't really go step by step enough on how you build a meadow. And I think part of what he was driving at is that you may deal with neighbors that are like that are going to be like, what are you doing? That doesn't seem like that seems like you're abandoning part of your lawn.
Yeah.
So you have to educate your neighbors too.
And you asked about, programming and initiatives. You're here with us tonight in Westport for this, your talk, which is the capstone event to our latest program called Your Yard, Our Climate. Our idea was to bring together a number of different organizations in Westport. There are many groups that are doing really good work here, but I think we're all inclined, and this is, I think normal, to be siloed a bit. And so Sustainable Westport's idea was, let's bring everybody together, develop a coalition around a central idea. The changes that you make in your yard, whether it's a tiny little yard, it's some containers on your deck, or it's an expansive property, individually make a difference in terms of a collective community climate. And so we've had a whole series of programs from pollinator planting to
education on electric leaf blowers, electric equipment, more sustainable sort of actually landscaping practices.
fewer pesticide use. I mean, kind of anything that we could do that fell under this umbrella. We had about 16 programs over the course of 3 months, bringing all sorts of different people to the table to talk about and empower them to feel like they can make a difference.
And how has that gone? And are residents involved in this? Are these programs for the?
They're all geared mainly to residents.
Yeah.
Not just in Westport either, because we've had these other organizations, and these are nonprofits and some businesses, host these events. Because we are cross-marketing it, our idea was that we'd hopefully just reach more people collectively, right?
Right.
Since all of us have our own followers and different customer bases, so to speak.
Have you found or heard any pushback yet when you propose these more progressive ideas to maybe we'll call it rewild, or maybe we'll call it renaturalizing, just something a little more euphemistically acceptable.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. But so far, many times in my experience, the impression of, let's say it's rewilding, that seems to be the term that's most familiar. It's scary to people because they're used to those manicured hedges and clipped lawns and,
Right.
no leaves on the ground. And when somebody wants to try to maybe convert a little bit of their lawn to more native perennials,
Yeah.
they're beautiful when they're in bloom, but sometimes, once they go over, they're dying back as perennials do. And then it's, perceived as, oh, that's not so pretty. But what they also don't know is many of those perennials that are dying back are also becoming habitat for overwintering bees in the stems, the hollow stems, and all these things they don't know yet. So a big part of your job, I imagine, is, as you've already said, education and then getting them to care. But I'm wondering, to my question, have you heard any or felt any pushback to people being more receptive to actually implementing some of these?
No, not yet. And I would say we'll have to see how this goes, right? I mean, I will say I think the people that attended a lot of these events, they're already interested in this stuff. I mean, I went to one on, compost tea. That's not for just like someone who's never, gardened before. We're like deep in worm casings, and it's like, it's pretty esoteric stuff if you don't garden already. So I don't think we've heard any actual pushback yet, but the question is, are we reaching those people that have super manicured hedges? And like, I don't know that they're coming
Are
to
they
our
showing
events
up?
yet.
Right.
We don't know.
Right. And and those people, and then the younger people, again, how you draw people in. Some of the feedback that we've received, one of the ideas is, how about some programming for younger families or families with young children? How do we get kids' hands in the soil and make this something that families can do together? And in fact, in posting for tonight across some of the platforms, that was one of the things that I said is, let's talk about growing our own food with our families, right? That's really powerful. And that brings people to the table in a way that's a little different than stop using pesticides. They're bad for the birds and the bees.
It becomes very tangible, the connection. Like, of course, I'm not going to feed my children tomatoes that I'm growing in my own yard,
Yeah.
sprayed with some chemical, right? No,
Yeah.
I would never do that.
Yeah.
So,
And it's also not mutually exclusive that you have to give up your whole lawn in order to put in a food
No.
garden.
Well,
You know.
and so I think, again, that gets to the core message that we come back to over and over again. Small changes. It's
Mhm.
all we're asking for.
it's not all or nothing.
That's right. And change begets change. And we are both, I mean, that's how we're here. My origin story, so to speak, is I was doing compost duty at my kids' school. So all the public schools in Westport divert food scraps, and it's collected by a commercial company. And when they're in kindergarten and first grade and they're learning in the cafeteria, they have parents come in and help out. So I went in, I volunteered to do that. Such a great opportunity.
Mhm.
And I said to myself, if we're doing this in the schools and I'm not doing this at home, and the truth is, I don't compost in my backyard. I said that when I moved to the suburbs, I would. I was committed to it. And then life got away from me,
Yeah.
right? I'm busy with work. I'm busy with the boys, et cetera, et cetera. But this feels like something I can bring it to the transfer station. And I feel really good about it. And now no food waste goes into our trash, into our rubbish. It is recycled. And we tell people it's 100% recyclable. It's the good stuff. And then you do that. And I started that, and my trash all of a sudden was dry and light. I hardly had any real waste. And then I looked at my recycling. I was like, wow, I have 2 huge blue bins of recycling. Oh, wait, maybe I need to dig into why I have so much recycling. And then you start to think about that. And it's one thing and the next and the next. And then you get your compost back at the end of the year and you think, what am I going to do with this?
Oh,
Oh, cool. Let's use it with the kids.
good problem to have.
It's a really interesting process to go through, and it feels good.
Yeah. Speaking of feeling good, you have connected with a surprising amount of people in your community, in your city, and beyond. And a big part of how that happens is your incredible website that's thorough, it's targeted, it provides not just the thumbnail information, but an opportunity to learn more in every category. And I was honestly impressed as I spent time on it. I just thought that, as you noted, is one of the best things you could have done, but you did it so well.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, you've connected with a lot of people on Facebook and social media. You've got a really good following and a relatively small audience, so to speak, in the big picture. But clearly, you're figuring out how to connect with these people. Talk about some of those wins. I've just scratched the surface on that.
Well, so I first have to say thank you for the website. Joe and I spent, when we first joined, that was the first thing we did. We went out and met with a lot of people trying to figure out how best to connect and what was our value add. And we felt like having that information accessible in one place was really important. And needless to say, it's a beast, right? And
Yeah.
we don't stay on top of it quite as much as we could or should. We'd love to have somebody to do that, but it is a really good starting point, and it's not used enough. So by all means, I hope anybody listening, and certainly beyond Westporters, but Westporters in particular, take advantage of that and enjoy that as a resource. Social media has been fun for us, and we laugh about it all the time. We have a pretty goofy presence on Instagram and subsequently Facebook. Joe and I do these videos. We do something
Trash Talk
called
Thursday.
Trash Talk Thursdays. I mean, really much to the chagrin of our children. My son said to me at one point, one of the boys said, please tell me nobody that I know or parents follow you. And I knew that we had hit the zenith, so to speak, when I was at Whole Foods in Westport, and this woman comes bombing up to me and says, you're the trash lady. You're the trash. So it's now become a family joke. Like, we're trash ladies. It's as good as it gets.
But I have to say, people do really respond. I mean, as
Yeah.
you can tell, given her interaction in the supermarket. But I do think people find it's one way we are relatable. They're small tips. And I do think there's a whole segment of the population that we're trying to reach that's kind of all they can take at first, right? A small tip. Oh, I didn't know that. I have to screw on my cap before I recycle my bottle. Like really small things.
Mm.
for like the tried and true environmentalists, they're like, whatever, we already knew this, but we're trying to reach everyone,
Yeah.
So I mean, you really can't. I think it's important not to make anyone feel ashamed that they don't know something, or that they can't be included in this movement that we're, I think, trying to create, right? Again, it's for everyone. There's something for everyone. And so those Trash Talk Thursdays, while goofy and silly, they really do resonate with people.
People love that. They love
I
the
think they do.
authenticity. They love the realness. They love the humor. They love that side of it. And to your point about the hardcore environmentalists, they're already doing it.
They are already doing it.
Well,
There's something else for them, I think, too, that it's hard to be everything.
Yeah.
yes.
But we try to, and I do think another way we can help, I don't even know, those tried and true environmentalists is like, we view ourselves as connectors a lot. So we're not experts in any one thing. We really aren't. We like to dive into things and learn about it, but we also are connected through our networks in the state of Connecticut and our surrounding towns that are, and other sister organizations that are doing this work. We can connect people to other people, depending on whatever their interest is. So I think that's an important role we play too, and that the website can also play is like, we refer people to other organizations that are doing more in a certain area or whatever it is.
I think approachable is a really important word too. I think about the trash talk, and we do a lot of these recycling tips. Recycling is so frustrating. And I think, again, as is the case for many things, it's overwhelming. And what do you do when you're overwhelmed? You shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So I am quick to say I have made a million mistakes. I'm still learning. All of this has been a process, and that's okay because I'm trying to do better, right? I'm doing a good job and I can still do better. And I think being approachable in that way for people, we hear it a lot. Oh, I give up. I just give up. It's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And we say, no. Please don't give up. Start slow, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And we, Joe and I, trash ladies, have made mistakes and learned the hard way, and that's okay.
As a gardener who's been doing this most of my life, I tend to overdo it all the time. And somebody who's been doing it for so long, I too get overwhelmed. And it's easy to see how people can shut down. And my advice, just as you gave for new gardeners, is somebody asked me, what's the number one thing you would recommend to new gardeners? I'd say start slow. Don't
Mhm.
overdo it. I don't want you to be overwhelmed in the
Yeah.
first season because you'll never come back. You
Yes.
can always add. To put myself in the shoes of a Westporter who's new and really intrigued by the opportunities that you're offering, I'm curious and I want to learn more. Back to the website for a second. It is such a, as you said, Joe, a non-threatening, non-overwhelming experience that makes me feel like I can do this. And not only that, but you're giving me specific ways that I can start. Maybe a few paragraphs to get me on board or more curious. And then if I want to learn more, there's a button I can click and it
Mhm.
takes me into multiple ways that I can engage even at a deeper level. And I just think that's brilliant. I know you worked really hard on that a few years ago, but that tool needs to be exploited to the nth degree just because it's, from my perspective, is who in trying to reach people for 3 decades on this topic, is the best thing I've ever seen as far as that kind of tool for a goal.
That's awesome. I love that. Honestly, there was a lot of intention around even like the icons that were used,
Mhm.
to make them feel approachable. The woman who actually created the Sustainable Westport logo, I mean, that was, I think, a lot of her thought behind the logo was like, how do you make the font approachable by people? It's great. That's kudos to her and her design, honestly. But we did work a lot on it. And I think it's hard to keep on top of
Oh, yeah.
everything that's going on. Honestly.
It's rapidly evolving. And
Yeah.
that's exciting, right? That is terrific. And it means that somebody is constantly changing, updating, modifying, and needs to stay ahead of it. And we want to be able to provide that up-to-date information. I think that's really important.
And you mentioned the pillars of progress earlier on, and that's kind of your metric to put your finger on the pulse on how you're doing and what's working and not working. But you can't do it all.
No.
And what are some of the obstacles and challenges that you wish would go away or that you could overcome in the short or long term?
I think we're always looking for true partnership with our town. And I think that's something that ebbs and flows with who's sort of in charge of running the town. It's turning talk into action and having a real commitment that sustainability needs to be part of how we live our lives, how the government's run, how decisions are made in our town. That is what it is. And I think it's in part why we are a nonprofit, because we know that we can only control sort of what we do and our decisions, but we hope we're influencing the decisions the town's making too. And I think we are. I mean, I think that we are. What is another obstacle? I mean, I think in general, our obstacles can be just getting people to care, a little bit of apathy, a little bit of no sense of urgency from people,
Right.
right? That this is going to take care of itself. Do I really need to change my habits right now? It feels like, something will come in to fix whatever is happening with our planet.
Or that it's the government's responsibility
Sure.
exclusively, or it's corporate responsibility, and that it's not individual responsibility. I think that's very challenging.
Changing behaviors, period, is very challenging,
Absolutely.
right? Change is hard in many facets of your life. So
Yeah.
And then, the other thing I think that's important, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, is people are busy. We hear that a lot. I am so busy. I am very busy,
hmm
right? Whether you're working, running a family, regardless of what you're doing, it has to take some semblance of priority. It's just that simple. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. We are all very busy, and yet we must prioritize this, because this is our future. This is our family's future. This is the natural world's future. It's not a joke anymore. I am a little intolerant of the busy narrative.
Yeah.
Joe and I have 3 kids each.
Yeah.
Joe and I do this on a volunteer basis. We live very busy lives. We've both had successful careers. We know what busy is. It doesn't take a lot of time. You have to care.
Joe, you said a second ago, the hardest thing is putting talk into action. And one of the things that I loved in going through your website and going through some other information I was looking at, you all are very clever at your catchy little phrases like refill, not landfill, your yard, our climate, the promise project, or
make a promise.
make a promise.
Yep.
And that one was really clever. As I'm asking you these questions, I'm also thinking on behalf of other people in other towns who really like the sound of this, and they
Mhm.
want to try to pick pieces of this that then maybe they
Sure.
can implement too. So that's a lot of the motivation behind my asking you some of these questions. Talk about the Promise program.
We were approached by a filmmaker last summer. He works with other nonprofits to do some sort of, whether it's campaign work or promotional film work. And, for us, our priorities were a little more brand awareness. So we worked with him to film 3 small, very small informational videos with different Westport residents. They were members of our board, some people that are otherwise involved in the organization. And we had different themes to them. And that campaign, Make a Promise, was one of the themes of one of those videos, with snippets of our beautiful town, I think, throughout. The idea was that it's a small, I mean, it could be a big promise. It could be a real small promise. I think one of them was to bring their reusable shopping bag every time they went shopping. They were supposed to run the gamut of the sort of things that you could do that were meant to inspire people to make a change.
And we released that in January, kind of in lieu of the resolution concept.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to make a promise to do something in this coming year moving forward to advance sustainability.
Mhm.
So it was really interesting to have all of these different people come up with different ideas, soup to nuts, right?
Yeah.
I think there was a comment about more meadows,
Mhm.
less bags, biking. There was quite a bit
Yeah.
about, more biking. It's really exciting to hear what people want to do and can do. And then you have it on video so you can hold them to it.
And you had people of all ages, from the
Yes.
youngest
We
to
did.
the
Yes.
oldest.
We
It was
did.
great.
Yeah,
Right?
we
It's
did.
important.
And those kids are very inspiring.
I know they are.
They're cute and inspiring.
Yeah. Very clever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joe, earlier in this conversation, you talked about when you're approaching people to care about a cause or whatever it is you're working on at the time, leading with an environmental concern can often be off-putting. And if they don't care, they can pretty much shut down at that point, no matter what. If you're talking about puppies and kittens after that, it doesn't matter. They're done. But at the same time, what you're doing, Sustainable Westport, and all the different ways that you're trying to connect in some small way and get people to care
Hmm.
is not a political issue. It is so far reaching in many ways that doesn't matter about who you are as a.
I think that's right. I don't think it is a political issue, though I think it gets cast that way often. We really do try to lead with the other issues that may be pressing for people as opposed to the environment. It could be an economic issue, it could be a health issue, it can be a lifestyle issue. I think there's just so many things that sustainability can touch upon that resonate with people, which is why sustainability is a tough word because I don't think people really know what it means.
Mhm.
But there's some piece of it that does matter to them. And I think that's the key. It's like getting to that individual person's what is that thing that matters to them?
Identifying that
Yeah.
and then connecting the pieces together. But when you talk about it being a nonpartisan issue, right?
Yeah.
I often say we all live on this planet together.
Mhm.
We are all stewards of the earth. And so there is something that each of us, a connection that we have. And even if you don't have a connection to your garden, right? There's some way that we can connect you to this bigger picture. And you have to remember, all of us have to remember, we live on this earth together. Every day, we are doing things that are probably not good for the earth. Are we doing things to offset that? How can we change our behaviors? And honestly, how can we leave this place as good as we came to it? Or, ideally, maybe a little bit better.
Yes, and I think that key there too is this interconnectedness. It's so tough in today's environment to remember that, but things like healthy, clean air, clean water, that's not something that exists just in your little space of the world, right? It touches everyone, and I do think you kind of have to get reconnected to your humanity to like have this really truly resonate because that is when you start thinking beyond just yourself. Can be a tough message, but that is the truth, I think.
Well, you've given people a lot of opportunity to find their place in the bigger picture. And your vision statement, I'm going to read it just because I think it just really summarizes so well what your long-term goal is here. And it is this. Our vision is a sustainable Westport where everyone is involved, feels empowered, and takes action. It should include all Westport residents and businesses and municipal leadership. Just picturing that all coming together as a community and of care and the hopefully contagiousness in a good way that that can lead to across the country and beyond. That would be amazing. But it's starting. I know that you often reference other organizations doing this around the country, and we're all learning from each other. But now, hopefully, this is a new chapter that people can learn from too in this conversation. And just kudos to you, Johanna and Gately, and your team. You're doing an amazing job, and I honestly am very impressed with what I've learned, and I'm very encouraged by the progress that you're going to be making, and I'm going to be paying close attention and rooting you on.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Well, I hope this conversation sparks some ideas for how you can take action where you are, whether that's starting small at home or helping lead a bigger initiative in your own community. And if you'd like to dig deeper, be sure to check out the notes below for this episode because we've included links, resources, and more information on Sustainable Westport and how they're making a real difference. So if you recall, I mentioned at the top of this podcast, when I did this interview with Gately and Johanna, Joe, I thought it would be fun just to play around because by the time we sat down, we'd had lunch together and I got a sense that they were kind of fun going and, could roll with the punches. And I like to have fun on occasion and just spring a really weird question right off the top for people that don't know what I'm about to ask. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for that, just to kind of get them laughing and, relax them a little bit as we got into the interview. So without knowing any of the questions that were to come, I opened up with this question and it got a few laughs. So I just figured it would be kind of fun to insert that right now and wrap up this episode. So for what it's worth, here it is. So Johanna and Gately, what I'd like to do from the top before I get to know you and our listeners get familiar with you, let me just ask you a general question to get your take on the following, and that will get us going.
Okay.
All right. So do you prefer to use a mycelium-based soil amendment, or do you prefer peat or core? And what would be the reasons for either?
Wow. I don't have a good answer to that at all.
I'm over my head.
Yeah, Mayday,
I'm
help.
over mycelium based. You know why?
Why?
I understand there's some organic matter and living material.
Okay.
Mycelium.
What she said.
Super. Joe, buckle up.
I
It's
know.
going to be a long hour.
I feel like I'm in a class.
I'm glad that he thinks we're funny.
Oh, no.
So Johanna, okay. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you back here next week. Take care.